Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Leadership Greater Washington Frontline Conversation. We're thrilled to have Doug Damron with us, a member of the class of 2020, as Senior Managing Director at Newmark. We've gotten a lot of questions from our members about their office space leases, about what they should be looking for, can they downsize, how to approach negotiations, renegotiations. So that's why we've asked Doug to be with us this morning. But before we get into that, Doug, first, this is the first time I think I've ever interviewed somebody who's got my name. So welcome. It might get a little confusing for me today, but welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We'll call you a boss on this.
How are you feeling? How's your family's health? How are the people you work with health? What's the status of your workplace, and what's going on right now with you?
Well, thanks for asking, and thanks for having me today. I've watched several of these Frontline Conversations, and I've enjoyed all of them. I think it's great service you all are doing for us. It's diversity of thoughts and opinions and conversations during this time. So really appreciate your sponsors as well for doing it. But as far as well I'm doing, as you all know, and we were just catching up about it, is I'm doing about as good as I've ever been personally. My wife just had our baby son last Monday, and
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
As you can see my office here, I've got the wide angle, the biggest wide angle of anybody in real estate. You can see my family back here. I've got a little girl who just turned 3, and it made me think about this as I was thinking about our conversation. We always ask everybody how they're doing. If you would have asked me back in really any other month, March, April, May of this year, I'd say pretty poorly. This is such a tough time with, the political instability to the racial injustice and everything else, the COVID deaths. It's been a pretty horrible year. But this last week has really made me think about how it's the important things in life that are the most important. I hate to sound cliche, but it's about health and family, and mine's expanding right now. So personally, I'm doing great. Commercial real estate, my business is difficult right now, to say the least. You don't have to be in my business to understand that if you're a commercial office lease negotiator, business is difficult right now. But I'm looking forward to this conversation because, like with any challenge, there's opportunity, and I think there's a lot in our marketplace right now and for the foreseeable future for tenants who are looking to negotiate or renegotiate their leases coming up.
So let's just use Leadership Greater Washington as sort of a case here. We had a number of square feet, 5 offices plus cubes plus storage space, and we were able to downsize and renegotiate our lease with our landlord, who is the owner occupant of our building independent sector. So I think we're very fortunate that way. So we've been able to save thousands of dollars. It's a small group of 6. But we don't plan on coming back full time into the office with everybody there at the same time once we're able to get together again. So how does that? Is that a typical thing you're seeing nowadays, or is that something very different from people being able to renegotiate? And what advice would you give somebody like a small nonprofit to do concerning their lease?
That's one of the difficult things when you broad stroke this conversation, right? Is that it's really a case by case basis. But I'll try to do it in this conversation. Yours is, you are a very small group, as you understand. With I consider you guys SEAL Team 6 over there. Being able to work from home, get through all this, and now with you have the new UR6, so it's kind of funny to look at it that way. But yours is, you're in an owner occupied building. Independent sector is literally in your business. I would say that they even look at it a little bit differently than most because they are a nonprofit. So it's really working with their CFO, as you did, to say, hey, look, let's go in and do the smart thing for a nonprofit, help them, help us. And that's how you were able to negotiate that. So that's yours is a very specific case that really isn't maybe germane to the whole market in total. Because the average size tenant in Washington, D.C. is about 7,500 square feet, and they're just looking at a different set of dynamics. But, again, if you were to go in and broad stroke it, you could go in and say, looking forward, and this is one example I maybe want to leave you with, is say a 7,500 square foot tenant in the marketplace right now. If you're able to do a longer term transaction, you literally can get like the largest concession package that we've ever seen in the marketplace here right now. But if you're not able to do that, then you're really looking at kicking the can. And what did you say? You said you did a 1 year term.
So our new lease is 1 year to next December. Yes, as
Okay.
a compared to that we usually have a 5 year lease. So we said with the turmoil, we're just going to do 1 year lease. And I want to congratulate Debbie Kaplan for sort of taking the initiative here and spearheading all this and getting these great results for us.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing a lot of that in the marketplace right now. So say a group like yours is you're working from home successfully right now. A 1.5 year lease will get you, we think, out of the pandemic. And we're seeing a lot of groups do that right now, sort of kicking the can, if you will. You didn't get, if you were in a normal market, again, the broad stroke it, if you were looking for, say, 2,000 square feet in the marketplace, if you are able to go long term, you're going to get those greatest concessions. You weren't able to get those by doing the shorter term transaction. But what you got is what you really wanted and needed at this time, which is flexibility of a 1.5 years. So year and a half term.
And the lease that we got out of was due to expire next August. So we had some flexibility there. What do you do if you've got 3 years left on your lease? What if we had just signed a lease and we were 4 years out from a new one?
So when you look at it that way, it really comes down to scale in a marketplace. Yours is a small scale, the large scale being 50 to 100,000 square feet. That's a market mover. For say if you're 100,000 square feet and you are looking at the pandemic affecting your staff and you're interested in downsizing, say to maybe 65,000 square feet, that's where a landlord, if you're 3 and 4 years out, will most likely go ahead and look at that and say, okay, if you're 3 and 4 years out, let me go ahead and deal with this, say big law firm, for example, or big nonprofit. Let me go ahead and plug a hole in my building where, in 3 or 4 years, I'm going to have that hole if they move somewhere else. So let me go ahead and assist them, let them go to 65,000 square feet if they can give me something that I want. And what do they want? They want a longer term. So if you're looking at that and saying, I want the benefit of getting 30,000 square feet and downsizing, but I can go ahead and lock into a 10 or a 15-year transaction, you can get a great deal of concessions, and it makes sense for you to do that. Now, if you're your size or that average size tenant of 7,500 square feet right now in the market, and you've got 3 to 4 years remaining on your lease, a landlord is not likely to negotiate with you to your benefit on that, because we're really looking in the next 2 years. We're all crystal balling this right now, and landlords have to do that. That's their business. I think they're looking at saying we're going to be out of this pandemic by then, and the market's going to be really recovering. So why would I, put myself in that position by negotiating with a normal, average size group in DC for something that's farther out? So there lies the difficulty with being smaller. But again, it's very case by case specific, because if you were able to do it being a couple thousand square feet, another landlord and institution may say, look, we're looking at our building, we have 95% occupancy right now. If we can just plug a few more holes and we get out of this pandemic, we want to sell our building, and that's attractive to Wall Street, other institutional investors. So we're willing to do that. So there are some cases where they might be able to negotiate with you being 3 or 4 years out and being a small office lease.
So we've got a couple of questions from people about getting out of a lease completely, about if I've got 5 years left on my lease, what do I do? I think you've sort of talked about that, where basically you're saying there's not a lot of options for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me give you this example too, because I thought about it, and again, broad stroke. Let me give you an example of, say, the average size tenant, which I already spoke to a little bit in DC, and saying these are what some of your options are. If you're about 7,500 square feet, which is the average size in the Washington DC region for office user, in your lease is coming up, say, in the next 12 to 18 months. That's the perfect strike zone for you and for landlords who are willing to compete for your tenancy. That was even pre-pandemic, because it takes you sometimes, it can take 8 to 10 months to build out your office space. So most of these decisions pre-pandemic for office users of that size were made a year or more, typically 2 years even, in advance of their lease expiration. But if your lease is coming up within that window, you're really in the golden zone. you're really in the golden zone if you're able to go ahead and say, I can walk into a longer term transaction of about 10 years. So that will get you the most concessions. And we're looking at that being around $250 a square foot in total concessions, which is a lot of money right now. So those concessions include tenant improvement dollars, rental abatement, and a reduction in your rental rate. So the average size is 7,500. The average rental rate for office space in DC is $57 a square foot. So if we were out looking at space and we found one that looked like it was an ideal fit for us and the asking rate was $57 a square foot, we would, in this market, be able to likely negotiate that down to about $54 a square foot. So multiple dollars off. Whereas before we might be able to get $2 off per square foot. The other two buckets of the concessions are rental abatement and tenant improvement dollars that I spoke of. The rental abatement, we're able, Doug, to get right now 2 years of rental abatement for a 10-year lease for a 7,500 square foot tenant. Before the pandemic, it was about a year. And that means rental abatement is free rent. That means when your lease starts, you as the tenant will not pay rent for 2 years. And then you'll pay on that $54 rate from there on for the remaining term of the 10. So, well, sometimes they put 2 years on top of that, but to make it a full 10-year term. The other bucket of the concessions is tenant improvement dollars. Your tenant improvement package right now, for again, 7,500 square foot, $54 square foot deal, 10-year term is about $115 a square foot. That bucket of money is enough for, say, a nonprofit, for example, to completely build out their space from shell, get their ideal space and footprint. It also includes furniture in the infrastructure there. So essentially, soup to nuts, the tenant will not have to come out of pocket if they do that with the $115. Before the pandemic, we were looking at $80 to $90 per square foot for tenant improvement dollars. So all that adds up to about the concession package of about $250 a square foot. Best terms I've seen. I've been doing this 20 years, and this is the most dynamic market for tenants that we've seen. Now, we can get into the discussion. I'm sure more questions will come in. Now everyone's able to go ahead and do that ideal, 10-year maximum concession package. But, I can tell you this as somebody who looks at this every day, we're going to be in this zone for the next 18 to 24 months of being able to get that transaction. So as we pull out of this pandemic, I'm really advising clients, and some of my colleagues may disagree with this, and certainly other people in the industry. I'm advising my clients, if you can hold off on making a decision, and you can, it's tough to crystal ball exactly when to do it, but I would hold off for the next 6 months to make a decision if you can, because I think the economic terms are going to get a lot better.
So Doug, that leads directly to a question from Mika Wick. And Mika, thank you for joining us today. For those of us in need of new office space by August, September of 2022, when would you suggest signing a new lease, given how much is changing? I assume there will be more flexibility and availability, but when will that end, and how do you best take advantage of this market? So if I'm looking at something less than 2 years from now, when do I start negotiations for a new lease?
If you're looking at something, your lease is expiring in 2022, it really works itself into the example that I just gave you. For a lease that landlords will compete for your tenancy. They did before the pandemic. Kind of a pre-pandemic and post-pandemic conversation here. Pre-pandemic, they would always compete for your tenancy when you're 2 years out. It does depend generally what size you are. So maybe you could say, but if you're a 2,000 square foot tenant, not as likely, but in some cases they would compete for that tenancy. But if you're the average size tenant, again, 7,500 square foot plus, they will definitely compete for that. And you can start really right now, and then go on to my advice of really not pulling the trigger on the space until next summer. And at that point, that gives you enough time to build out the office space and then have occupancy in 2022 and not pay rent for potentially 2 years from that point. See, it also, if you're leased, I'm working with a couple of clients now who have waited. They were going to be making decisions right when the pandemic started. and they decided to hold off, and their lease is expiring next spring. I mean, it's getting closer to where these clients that I'm speaking of can't go into shell office space. They have to go into space that's already built out. But they are hitting this market at the complete right time because they're able to even get more rental abatement because no one else is able to move in faster than them. So in some cases, you're able to get 2.5, 3 years rental abatement, Doug. It's a case by case scenario, but again, it favors the tenant right now.
So a question from Maria Rodriguez, how about subleasing? If I've got a long-term lease and I don't need the space, is there a market for somebody to come in and take some of that space from me?
So there certainly is. The sublease market is tough right now. We have my business partner and associate. We have several subleases in the market, and it's tough. You know, I was looking at our stats the other day put together by our research program, and you know, we have 365 million square feet in the metropolitan area, and about 2.5% of that is sublease space. That's really high. That's about 90 basis points higher than it was this time last year out there. So a lot of space is coming to market, and really, again, in my analysis, a lot more is going to be coming on the market in the next 6 months. So it's difficult, but we're seeing subleases move. We actually just signed a sublease last week for about 6,800 square feet, and it wasn't a disaster of a transaction for my client. They actually were able to recoup some significant dollars. But so if you're thinking about subleasing 1 or 2 offices or something more substantial, you know, there is a lot of competition in the market. But you know, if you compare this to other markets, we're doing quite well as a DC area. I mean, we always seem to, Doug, know this. We do well compared to most markets. For example, the same research report I read in San Francisco, their sublease market, by the way, is 10% of their overall office vacancy. So, or office market is 10% vacancy. So we're pretty lucky in that regard, but it's something you can look at if you know, in terms of recouping money to do right now.
And Britton Jacobson has a question about what are your thoughts on the current versus future impact on the sublease market? And where are we headed with that?
Well, I think we've got a rough winter to get through for a lot of reasons, and I think everything's going to stabilize in the next 6 months. I think in the next 6 months we're going to see a lot of sublease space come on the market. It may be, you know, we're at 2.5%. We may be closer to 3% before the end of the year. So you know, when more sublease space comes to the market, the impact, you know, on rental rates is that it suppresses them. So it drives down the relet market for most landlords who are pushing their space. So it suppresses market rents. So that leads itself to my discussion on why I think if you can wait as a tenant who's looking to lease office space right now, the end of the year would be the best time, in my opinion. And again, it's case by case. It may be the best time for you to do it right now, depending on your own situation. But again, I'm trying to give you an overview that, you know, typical today.
So a couple questions, one from Bill Zink and a follow-on from Mika. When the dust settles, what do you think the new office space will look like? Remote work is here to stay, and staff will come to office 2-3 days a week. How do you share that space, and what might it look like? And then Mika's is, when you think about decisions about design and new office trends in response to the pandemic, health, space layout, et cetera, where will that land, and who should we look to for guidance on those kinds of issues? So what's the office going to look like?
Well, first of all, shout out to my fellow class of 2020 and Blue Mind Trust member, Bill Zink. Thanks for joining. Virtually unstoppable of our group.
So Doug, your Mind Trust is really into the chat room here, and they've renamed the Mind Trust. It's now the Damron Blue Mind Trust. So I kind of like that.
The Damron what?
Damron Blue Mind Trust.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I like that. I like that. So, you know, Doug, here's my answer to, and Bill, here's my answer to that question. You know, if I like to joke with my friends, if I had a, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, you're
Okay.
still on, Doug.
Okay, sorry, everybody went blank. I like to joke that if I had $1 for every article that I read that said that we were never going to go back to traditional office space when this pandemic started, I wouldn't have to work anymore. I think the narrative all along has been that we're never going to go back to traditional office space, and it's just not going to happen. I think this has been a pendulum that has swung one direction, and I think it's going to snap back in the other really soon. And I think it's going to happen sometime this summer. So it's hard for me to get into the conversation with all of this because, 2 or 3 days a week for the new staff layouts and so forth, because, so much of it is dependent on containing COVID, getting students back in the classroom and so forth. But, we have this, this is your first frontline conversation since the vaccine has been in distribution, Doug. And this is an exciting time. I think that we're going to get it contained. And to start answering your question, Bill, I think that's going to get us back in the office space. Our research department's even showing, we think that we're going to be back to 95% occupancy of where we were pre-pandemic levels eventually. Now, when's that actual day? A lot of us are saying, we're saying, January 1, clearly that's not the case. Now it's spring, and now it's maybe Labor Day is perhaps when we're going to do it. That's my guess on it, but we're going to be back. But our research department is saying, even if it is early, another year and a half from now, we're going to be back to probably 95% occupancy of office space. And I think it's going to not be dependent on COVID. I think we're going to go back to, I think there will be a trend, of course, to not have that. And there was a trend already to, your wide open workspace, your hot desking, I think will definitely go away to a degree. I think they have more space, but again, it's all about the research, and ours is showing 95% back. So hopefully that's helpful.
So Bill Zink's written a couple of responses. He says, I think we will go back, but I do think staff will want to work remote some. And then he says he has a hard time paying for office space that we use 3 days a week. So,
right.
And then the question is, how do you share that space safely?
How do you share it safely? How do you share the space safely? Well, we have a workplace strategies group here at Newmark that assists our clients in getting back to work, and we're doing a lot of, I bring them into the conversation here so I can speak to some of what they're talking about on reboarding. And a lot of it is using CDC guidelines, of course, and literally what we're learning every day, directional signage, which we all know about, on down to cleaning the desks every day, wearing masks in the office space and so forth. But I think that's what we're going to continue to do. But when we get back into the office toward that 95% occupancy, I think we're going to have the virus contained. And again, this is just a lot of opinion here, that it's not going to greatly impact office space usage in such a great way in the foreseeable future. Now, I think what's going to happen is it's definitely going to affect us in the sense that, where if you're a CEO of an organization or executive director and you weren't a fan of working from home pre-pandemic, and you would look at an employee sideways who wanted to do that, I think that's gone away. I think, sure, 35% of the workforce perhaps could have the option of work at home. I don't think that's going to be taken up by many, though, and I think that's what our research is showing. I read the same articles that many of us do every day, and again, back to the pendulum comment that I had earlier. This one I got up here, somebody sent me this morning. It was Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, who is, the vanguard of staying at home in their workforce. They were the ones first announced that, I think right up with Google, that July of next year is when they'll look to reboard. But he's saying that he's absolutely tired of it, and their productivity is suffering, and that it's like sleeping at work. So I think there's two sides to the coin here, and I think we're going to see that just snap back. I mean, Doug, what do you think? I mean, I actually listened to in your last frontline conversation. I thought you had a good comment that SEAL Team 6 you have there has done expressly well working from home, right? You said productivity is up, but what do we do about? And you mentioned this. What do we do about onboarding new people? What if you needed to double in size? How do you do that? How do you work them back into the corporate culture? How do you teach them? How do you help advance someone's career by having those casual conversations with them? I think this is what he was speaking to. And he also spoke to transitions. You all should see this article, maybe you can send it out. Talk about transitions from home work balance. And, we all appreciate the fact that we don't have a commute right now. I have a great one because I moved from downtown DC out to Northern Virginia, which was pretty good timing for the pandemic because I had more space. But, on a really bad day with traffic, it could be 45 minutes for my commute. And, everyone's saying, boy, aren't you glad you don't have that though, because you can work from home. And with what the CEO is saying, I completely agree with him that I actually miss my commute because that was my transition time to get back into the mode of I'm going to get home and see my babies. And I'd walk in refreshed because I was able to compartmentalize everything for that transition. So it's just some fascinating things that are out there. I think we're going to see more of that come to light over the next 6 months, 8 months. And it's going to get back to answer your question, I think that's going to focus us on how important being in the workplace is and not doing something that's so transactional, which is this. I just, that's the bummer that I hate with these things. I want to see you in person, Doug. I want to see everyone else. It's so awkward right now. I'm just staring at your face. Usually I'm able to look at people and have conversations with them before or after the event. Frankly, that's what I really glean from these things is the conversations that I have before or after an event, not actually what's being said by the panel. So there's my little diatribe on all of it. But
no, it is different. And in one of our Leadership Day webinars that Mohan Tavakoli's put together for us, somebody really reframed or created a new paradigm, I guess, for us to look at. We're not, for months now we say we're working from home. We're not working from home anymore. We're living at work.
Right.
And we have to adjust ourselves to be able to do that, to separate the home part from the work part. And right now I think it's just wearing everyone down that it's 24/7. You're always on call. And it is a difficult way to adapt. You don't have that downtime to decompress and to rethink things, as you said, to transition from one to the other because you're always on. So I think that will fuel a lot of the desire to get back to the office, at least on a limited basis. Although I saw where Google just announced they're not coming back till September of next year. They push it back even further.
And my one problem with the Google, even Microsoft, which I'm quoting, of course, but my problem with a lot of those articles that come out is that, Google was all over the news. Everybody's talked about what Google is. Not to beat you up on that, Doug, but everybody's talked about Google. We're not all Google. we're not all Google. I mean, now granted, a lot of us on this call, I'd say are within that same 5% of similar people, right? We're all able to take our laptops home and be fine, but we're not all like that. We've got to think about the rest of our staff. I would guess that not many young associates are on this call or new people within organizations. And how are they adapting with all this? How are they thinking? How am I going to ever speak to the executive director to really learn from her or him to get ahead on a Zoom call? This transactional thing that's going on right now? No, it's not. So I'm getting a little bit away from office space, but it all comes back to that, doesn't it? It's those thoughts that then will make some of the leaders that are on this call think hard about, hey, look, can we just rent an office that has 3 offices and a huge conference room for events in the future? I mean, those were some of the conversations I've had with clients. They've said, do we need it? Let's everybody work from home. We'll just have a big conference room to where we get together every once in a while. No, don't do that right away. And I will say, of course, I'm biased. So I'm sure that hasn't come up in the comments yet. I am, negotiating commercial office space. So it's in my self-interest for all of this to move forward. But I think I can compartmentalize really in my own, mind and sharing my thoughts on it. That I think it's the better of all of us that we get back to work.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about, as you mentioned, as I had said before, onboarding. That has always been my concern about working from home. How do you bring somebody new on? And we have done that. We have Doreen Allen, who's our new development director. And I got to say, he's doing a great job, but I got to say, I feel sorry for him because he hasn't met us in person. He doesn't have a way to gauge, who we are, what we look for, how to, what to expect from us. And it puts him in a tough spot. So that is a challenge for us. I mean, we're doing the best we can to make him feel welcome and to work with him, but it's not, as you said, it's not the same as being there in person where you can just soak things up from the atmosphere.
And Doug, what I've also read and I've heard from clients in conversations with them is how do you have loyalty as well? How do you instill that sense of loyalty with someone, just to go along with what you're saying? I think that comes with it, because it's much easier to say, oh, some other shiny object just come by, let me go run towards that. I think we're missing out on a lot of things that we haven't really thought about, even in the conversation. I think we will over the next 6 to 8 months. It's really setting in. So good luck with doing it.
It's not just the loyalty, I think it's also the corporate culture. I mean, we have a certain culture at LGW that we're very proud of, and how do you teach someone new that culture if they're not around it on a daily basis, if they're not, showing up for the class days, if they're not meeting the members and being involved personally with that. So that's something that I think is a major point in bringing us back together. And Mahan Tavakoli, our chair, just put in a comment that there'll be a shift back, but not fully, somewhere between where we were and where we are. Second point is don't make long-term decisions based on short-term data. So the office will be more of a chance to connect, build culture, and collaborate. However, there's much work that we can get done by many remotely. So a balance, again, is where he thinks we're going to wind up. So any thoughts on that?
You really just, I completely agree. I think that's to some degree what I was trying to speak to earlier, that, don't make long-term decisions based on this short-term data. You can have said it better. It's in long-term leases, I think, if anything, do something that's short-term, like perhaps you all did with a 1.5 year extension, because everything's going to be quite different in the next 2 years. But if you can take advantage of the marketplace, like I said, scale matters, and you can look long term, given all of these factors, then you can take advantage of it. But for the average size tenant, say nonprofit or government affairs corporation in DC, definitely be careful. Tread very carefully, because you could get into a bind. And then you have to get out of it. Say you go and just lease a couple offices, and all of a sudden everybody's back to work, and you're sitting there with a 2 or 3 year lease, and it makes completely no sense for your organization. So definitely take the time.
Well, I think we're in good shape at Leisure Greater Washington, because we've got the short-term lease that'll let us see what it'll be like when the vaccine's out, when things are getting back to normal, and what the demands are going to be. So. But there are, as you've heard in the call today, there are a lot of people out there who have these longer-term leases who are struggling with what to do with the space. And as Bill Zink said, they don't like paying for space when nobody's using it. So a question from Peter Abrams on, we've looked at this from the tenant's point of view, but the owners, how are they feeling? What are they going through right now, the property owners? And are they looking to sell off? We're going to see a lot of that. And is foreign investment looking to come in to do with some of that?
Well, again, my major expertise is really in tenant representation.
Yeah.
Of course, we're a full service shop, and the reason why I love working at a full service shop is because I hear the conversation about all those questions about how owners are feeling and so forth, and it's not good right now. I mean, as you can imagine, the investment sales market has not come to a complete stop, but it is just in this holding pattern, because if you're selling buildings based on pro forma, based on your leases, it's you're not getting the activity, so it's just stopped for many value added plays in DC. The core investments that are well leased, at 100% occupancy, those are selling, because you can long term, you can see outside the pandemic, you can look over the next 2 or 3 years and put value to that. So you're seeing some activity there. But owners in Washington, D.C., as it relates to leasing activity, there's two sides of the transaction. There's the tenant representative broker, and then there's the agency broker, the landlord's representative. And we go to battle and negotiate that office lease. I mean, they're in a lot of pain right now, clearly, because the vacancy rate's been increasing. I think one of the leaders that you had about this conversation we had was our research department said we were about 16.6% vacancy. We're looking at that going to about 19% over the next 2 years. So we're going to increase that. Again, early on in the conversation, I talked about sublease space. that's combined in there to make it overall 19%. Again, that's an unhealthy level if you're an owner. So they have to deal with all the issues that you even talked about last week in a conversation with the restaurant delinquencies. You have a portion of your buildings that's not paying rent. You have some organizations who have said, look, we're just going to go under. That's the concern about the next 6 to 8 months as organizations move into next year's budget and they don't see monies coming in or money's being cut. Is that going to create more losses for businesses and nonprofits, or are they going to default on their leases? So it's going to be a struggle. They're not feeling well. It's going to be a struggle for the next really couple of years. But again, on the tenant side, that's what I really focus on, is that's good for us. And the landlords will recover. I mean, we want everyone to do well and be happy. They're going to recover because, again, if the maximum vacancy rate that we're at in the DC area is 20%, it's not the end of the world. We're going to get through this. So, but it's a tough position for them right now, clearly.
One of the issues we haven't talked about is transportation, and the offices might be ready for people to move in, but are you safe in how you get to work? And I'll tell you right now, I would not be comfortable hopping on a metro going down to work every day. I just don't think we're safe on that, and I think that might delay the full recovery of the economy if we can't rely on our mass transit systems, or if they tell everybody drive by car, drive yourself to work, which would just be a nightmare in terms of the traffic here. And talk about your 45-minute commute, it would triple probably if that happened.
Oh, it'd be a nightmare. I mean, it's something that we're tracking. Our research department is, metro rail usage, transit. Those have all been hit clearly. How do we bring people on? But I think it gets out of my strike zone in terms of what I can really be professionally talk about. But I think look, it's the vaccine. Vaccine's going to contain this. I mean, how great is it? That's really another reason I'm happy right now. Birth my son, health, and that vaccine, because I know people personally who are getting the vaccine this week. There are frontline workers in DC. Some friends of ours that we just saw at Sibley Hospital where we had our baby are getting the vaccine right now, and I am so happy about that because I've only known people before that have died of COVID or gotten it, and that's containment. So, and then that's why market sentiment's up. The market's at the all-time high in the stock market, and there's this whole. I know that's not a leading indicator of everything, but it's sentiment. Is that we're going to get back, and I think that's what's going to lead back to metro rail usage and comfortability. That hey, it's March. We have this many hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people actually at that point will have had the vaccine. And I think we're just going to come into the spring much stronger. I mean, a lot of this is anecdotal too. We've seen that the virus picked up because of the winter season, and it will likely go down in the spring just because that's what viruses do. So we're going to pull out of this going into the spring with vaccines, the population perhaps getting inoculated by summer, and then COVID cases going down. It's hopeful, but anecdotally that will then lead to more metro rail usage. One thing that we did, it's interesting, I read about this, our research department put out the other day. We actually tracked fob usage. When you have an office fob that you go in for security, passive systems used by most, or something similar to it. So we tracked those in the DC region, and we are right about 20% occupancy right now of offices, people going in and swiping the fob every day, which is a little bit higher than I thought. I would have said about maybe 15%. But we tracked that, it was at 15% right as the pandemic was raging early on. And then it went up to 25% in November. So, and then it came down substantially as all these cases have picked up. So we're tracking those numbers, and I thought that was interesting. I think they're saying that we're gonna see that substantially uptake because of the vaccine over the next few months. So I'll let you know what those numbers are. It comes springtime.
No, that is very interesting, and I'm not one of the ones in that survey. I've used my fob once since mid-March, so I'm not part of the 20% coming every day.
Well, and I understand, Doug, this is definitely, I'm a glass half full conversationalist on this because we can clearly talk about all the variety of the reasons of why everything is just horrible right now. But I truly believe, and maybe we can do this conversation this time next year and see if I was right about where we're going to be in the marketplace. But I think we can all see that we're as narratives go, we love to just go one direction to an extreme. We love extremes in this country, right? And I think we're gonna flip back the other way with all this.
I agree with that. I do think we are. We're going to flip back quite. We won't, as Mahan said, it won't be a complete flip, but we will flip back, and people will be getting together. We're already talking about our Celebration of Leadership Awards presentation in October. You know, hopefully there'll be enough vaccine around and we can hold that in person. We're holding out hope for that. We're not confident of that yet, but we're holding out hope for that. So hopefully we'll be able to get people back together, and we can really hit the ground running with LGW once we
I can't wait.
once we're able to get together. Yeah.
And kudos to all of you for the work that you've done. It really, as I see every time, kind of getting close to wrapping up, and you all have done an excellent job of keeping us all informed. These frontline conversations, the other events have all been excellent. I love my class. I'm actually going to get on a 12 o'clock call with my mindset group. Can't wait to catch up with them. And it's really been an asset to my life, being part of the 2020 program. You know, it's and having those other leaders to rely on is something that is a special thing. I know you know it, but I let everybody else know that it is that great. And if you're not part of the program, I think you should look into it.
So we've got a question from Britton Jacobson. What about the current environment / long-term impact are you most excited about?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
What about the current environment / long-term impact are you most excited about? What are things that have changed or you see are going to change that you think are going to be for the good for us?
That's interesting. I'm trying to think about what I haven't said already, because literally all I can think about is containment of this virus that's keeping us from metro rail usage to getting back into the office space. So if that vaccine is just number one to me right now. But in terms of, I think, there's been a lot of innovation in our industry right now, and every struggle comes something good. And I think our workplace strategy group has come with some, they get too in the weeds, but they've come up with some great office layouts that I think are something that we're going to keep long term. I think it's so I think the discussion has gone back into the discussion has been focused on how we can work more efficiently in the workplace when we are here, to where office layouts are much different moving forward than they've ever been. This hot desking idea and some of these that I never necessarily agreed with, because you need to have your own space, I've always thought, but it got popular and then it's kind of waned a little bit, I think is completely gone. I think that's something that we're not going to see in the future. So I'm a big fan of not seeing that in the future. But I think some of these other layouts that you're going to see moving forward are going to be something that we're all going to be talking about from here on.
So what you're seeing office layout is less open space, more closed space, office space? Is that what you're looking at?
More meeting rooms, more compartments, and better office furniture.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're all sort of fascinated with it. What is the new office going to look like? And I guess we'll find out fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting stuff. It's innovative.
So what leadership lessons have you learned over the past 9 months? Anything that's sort of changed or come to mind for you as you've gone through this pandemic?
It speaks to, it's innovation. It's you have to be innovative. And I've heard you even say this before, in agile, and some other people have said that. You really have to be agile right now. I mean, how do you communicate with your associates that you work with? And as I lead a team, how do you keep that discussion going? How do you keep morale high? How do you continue to have conversations and real conversations with people, which is what I pride myself on being able to do. I don't do this very well. I do in-person meetings well, I think. I hate this transactional nature of not being able to see you or be able to talk to you before or after this event. So how do you adapt to that, but still, have substantive relationships with people? I think that's something I've learned and I had to learn more to do, and just picking up the phone and making time to to have those real conversations where before I would see them in person more than not. So, and for
And
work,
I'll just say that you do in-person meetings very well. The first time we met was sitting across from each other and just talking about LGW and what our interests are and what your interests were and seeing if there was a good fit there. So I'm
I remember
very
that
impressed that
conversation.
day. I thought it was a great conversation. So
Yeah, and it touches on a lot of different viewpoints. If you haven't noticed in
yeah,
our conversation here, I like to go on tangents and see what people think about things. I want to do this, some of the events you've talked about that you'd like to plan for LGW. All those are really impactful in person. So that's the personal side / business, because we're all people, people at work here. But it's from the more business side, it's yeah, how do we do it from a stay-at-home environment? By the way, showing office space has been trying. You can imagine that. It's been about as awkward as it can get, being all masked up and taking your temperature checks going into offices. But that all has to proceed. So you have to just work with it. There's just another layer right now on top of everything. And I think it's trying to make everyone feel comfortable is part of what I've had to learn, because people aren't comfortable. I mean, I sat on an office tour the other day, and the client has 2 kids at home, one with a heart condition. My heart goes out to them. I mean, there's a concern. There's, I want to douse myself with disinfectants to even be near him, but he had to get out and see the space, and concerned about that. So, again, long answer for a very complicated issue.
so any LGW members that you've reached out to during these past months, or that have reached out to you to
Yeah,
help?
that's a great
Other
conversation.
than the Damron Blue Mind Trust, which is
I was going to
meeting at
say,
noon today.
I've had a few great conversations. A couple people I've shared some battle stories with that I won't name, but really enjoyed that. And yes, my Blue Mindset group is the best. I really relied on them, and of course seeing some successes, and I think you have too, that have been coming out in the market or in the news about them. I'm really proud to be part of such a successful group there. So it's been fun.
Well, Doug, thank you very much for the conversation today. Thank you for all your insight into what we should do with our leases and how to try to get through this to the best advantage of the organizations that we represent. So I want to really thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to thank.
Well, I was just going to say, and I did, this broad brush a lot of this. And if anybody has any specific questions on their particular incident, happy to really dive deep in the weeds with them to talk to them about it.
I want thank you for that. I'm sure you will get some follow up because we did have a couple of very specific questions there. I want to thank PNC Bank for sponsoring these Frontline Conversations. They're a great partner with LGW. I'm very proud of their support over the years for us. I encourage you all to fill out the evaluation survey for this session today. I encourage you to take a look at our upcoming events and please join us in the future. Happy holidays to everyone. And Doug, I'll give you the final word.
Vaccine. Best news. I'm watching on my screen right now. It's wonderful. We're all going to be back to work soon, and we're going to get through this. And I can't wait to see everybody in person.
So just when I'm getting used to living at work, I'm going to have to find a way to get used to working it.
You're going to have to come outside eventually, Doug. Maybe not today, if it literally is snowing. But I'll just leave everyone with this too. I went ahead and made my commute. I want a little bit of kudos for this. I came all the way here because I wanted to talk about office space in my office, but this was the perfect day to stay home. So everyone, please wish me the best in getting home on the commute back during this winter snowstorm.
Doug, thank you very much. Happy holidays, everybody. Have a great rest of the year. Doug, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.